Welcome to the Compassionate Corner podcast, where we share stories of resilience, cancer, and hope. I'm your host, Roya Soleimani Winner, and this podcast is a voice for the International Society for Children with Cancer, ISCC. In each episode, you'll hear from survivor caregivers and medical professionals who all have firsthand experiences with cancer. They share their journeys, the lessons learned, and the moments of unexpected hope and joy. Whether you're facing a similar battle, supporting someone who is, or simply seeking to understand and learn from these powerful stories, you found the right place. Thank you for being with us as we explore these extraordinary stories of resilience and hope right here at the Compassionate Corner. And today, I'm honored to be joined by our guest, Ghazal Hassanzadeh. Ghazal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to be with you. And if okay with you, I'd love to share your background with our listeners and viewers, and then we can dive into our conversation. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's get to it.
All right. So friends, Ghazal Hassanzadeh is 27 years old and lives in Southern California with the love of her life journey partner and her dog. She is a 3-time cancer survivor, and as a child was a patient at Mahak, Iran's main pediatric cancer hospital. She's currently living with 2 autoimmune diseases, a rare neurological disorder, perimenopause, and a series of mental health diagnoses. And through all of these challenges, Ghazal embodies resilience and hope, and is now finding ways to help others too. After a decade working in the corporate world with a scale back, she took her darkest and deepest pains and is now turning them into her deepest passion as an aspiring recovery to resilience life coach to help others live their best possible lives as their 2.0 self. Ghazal loves to travel, explore, do yoga, and all sorts of self-help development. And one of her favorites are yoga and meditating through journaling. Ghazal, thank you again for being here, for sharing your story with us. So this brings me to sort of the next point, which is, what are your hopes for the future, whether it's personally for yourself or for the broader Thrivership community, to borrow your word, and still many are in the survivor community and maybe can't envision what thriving feels like because of where they are right now. So walk us through some of that, if you don't mind. It'd be great to hear your point of view.
Such a good point. And it's been coming up a lot for me. Because there's I need to work backwards right now with my mission and figure out how did I get to this point? Yeah. How did I take what I didn't believe in and turn it into main practices of every single day? If I don't meditate, if I don't do yoga, I'm not aligned. And if I'm not aligned, I can't walk through this earth know what my purpose is. And then if I don't know what my purpose is, then I start getting lost. And when I get lost, the cycle begins again. And so for me, breaking that cycle of events, one diagnosis after another, it really pushed me to go find those answers, but within, not externally. And so with medical doctors and therapists and physical training, what is it, PT? Yeah. I overdid it. I had, thousands and thousands of dollars in medical bills, in co-payments. They weren't even, if I didn't have insurance, I don't know where I would be right now. Yeah. But with the fact that I'm now at $0 a year, and I went from $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year to 0. And then I went from 7 missions to 1, and I went from 10 doctor appointments in a week to 0. That all for me is that transition of survivorship to thrivership. I'm not just surviving for my life. I'm not trying to find every answer possible outside. I'm going within to be able to figure out what's going on. Tap into your body, tap into your mind, and try to detach from the things that are keeping you accountable, or you're it's that detachment, I believe, that we need to go through, and then we need to accept. We need to surrender, and I can talk about this all day long. But these are some words that I'm spitting out, and hopefully people start to take on that journey as well and ask themselves, what does it mean to surrender? What does it mean to accept? What does it mean to let go? What does it mean to be my truest self?
Yeah. I could talk to you about these things all day. Thank you for sharing them. And actually, on the surrender part, I just immediately thought about, standing in a difficult yoga pose and sort of how that is a metaphor for surrender. You have to breathe into it. You have to focus on your body. You also have to listen to your body, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So you posed some questions there at the end. I want to ask, what is surrender for you? What is letting go of attachments for you?
Yeah. Again, I go back to yoga practice so that I can connect that to real life. And it's not talked about so much in that way. So I think when I went to yoga, I was like in a very corporate level type of, thought process. Like, I got to do it this way and then do it that way, and then I'll be fine. And that's why I was like, why isn't this working for me? So I had to tweak my perspective. And so now, yeah, like you said, I did my first headstand 2 days ago.
It's amazing.
I didn't know I could actually physically do that. It was so nice to always see others do it, and I was like, nah, I can't do that. And then I just did. Like, I did it. I let go of the thoughts and the patterns that like just kept repeating and saying, you can't. And it was like, but what if I can?
Yes.
Then what? What's going to happen then? And then what's going to happen after that? And, we think like all these people that can do these crazy tricks or are so healthy or they have the six pack or whatever it might be, that it just came to them. It came with hard work, and it came with being able to surrender to the process and let go of what's holding you back, and then give into the process of allowing and trusting. And trust is a huge word I use every day. Just trust the process, trust the process. And I think that's what really got me through a lot of my cancer journeys and other health circumstances and I didn't know I'm doing it. I think I was doing it automatically based on survival mode again.
Yeah.
Like, I just kept doing the thing that I needed to do in order to survive. And then once you're out of survival mode, that's, I think, when a lot of people start to question, like, now what? Now, how do I actually do that, but in real life? And it's funny how it just gets more complicated as you go through the journey. Cancer itself is full of complications and battles, and it's so highly talked about, which it should be. But then afterwards, there's a whole set of new battles, and you're battling them day in and day out. And like I said, it does take a lot of courage to decide to say, I want to live for the purpose that I did survive. I get to live now the way that I want to. So
thank you so much for walking us through that. And again, congrats on hitting that headstand,
Yes.
because that is not a small feat. And again, I think we all don't realize that talk track exists for all of us, right?
Yeah.
And you might look at someone else and think this comes so easily. But as you said, it's hard work, and that's why yoga is a practice, right? And I
Yeah.
think the breath work and the journaling and all these pieces, like, didn't just magically happen, or someone was intrinsically more motivated. They were disciplined, right? And that's an interesting. I mean, again, we could do a whole episode on that combination of terms. But I'm curious because we mentioned some of the health issues in the beginning, in your introduction, but again, don't define you, but they are part of your experience. And we talked about this a little bit before, the sort of unexpected things, like your cancer is healed. Hopefully you've made it onto the side of surviving and then thriving. What are some of those untalked about things that pop up, either emotionally, spiritually, physically, that you could share with us, if you're open to it?
Yeah, I have two main points for that. So you said it, it's emotionally, spiritually, it's not just physical.
Yeah.
Like, I think when we think of cancer, it's like, oh, you're physically going through something. But you're also recovering from that, like I said, those emotions that have been suppressed and turned into this mass that you need to now remove from your body, and more in a forceful way. Like, a lot of the times, if something is like on you and it's sticking to your hand, you're like, okay, get it off. But cancer is inside of you. And so it doesn't, like, I don't think cancer is a coincidence. I think it's an indication for people to take a deep dive look into their lives and see if there's something that they can change about it. If they were to live their, best version self, are they actually living that? So with that being said, it's also the fact that, like, you need to look at it at different angles. You got to look at it from the emotional side. You got to look at it from the spiritual side. You got to, if that's, you know, if that resonates with you, and also the physical and the mental. It's, like I said, a never ending cycle, but it doesn't need to be that exact cycle that you created. You can break it. And I help people go through that process to break their cycle and turn it into a cycle that they truly love living, getting up in the morning. And I now take cold showers and I love it. I never thought I would love it. But I do love it because it does, again, let me surrender to that feeling of I'm in shock, I'm in danger, but then no, you're not, you're okay, you know? So.
It's like the cold plunge, but like longer because you're in the shower, right? And all the benefits that could come from that.
Yeah.
Is there a particular moment, and it could be more than one, during recovery that transformed your outlook or strengthened your hope for, making it through into the future? And like you said, having that courage to live?
Yeah, I think it was every moment that actually transformed. And again, I think I didn't give this a lot of thought back in the day. So it's hard for me to kind of like pinpoint on a specific moment. But that moment for me that pivoted everything is, well, I know a moment that pivoted how I was looking at everything. So I was looking at it a very like one-dimensional way. And, going to the doctors and making sure I'm taking the medications and depending on them to heal me. I never once depended on myself. I was afraid to. Like I thought, my body failed me, my mind failed me, my spirit doesn't exist. And so with that, it, like I said, it goes back to like losing that identity because all of these parts that you physically or maybe a little bit, in a different way of like viewing it, like spiritually, you can't physically be able to touch it, but you know that it exists. Mm-hmm. You know that there's something out there. You might not know what it is. And so I think I lost the sense of myself. I lost myself. And then I let it get the best of me. And with that, I can't imagine being back in that place ever again. I believe that if I keep continuing the practices that I have currently, they will keep me in check and in alignment with who I am. And then also, of course, I think like surrounding yourself with the right people and being able to share your story. I think it's so important to share your story out there and so that you can just inspire people to start sharing their story. It really has helped me to be able to repeatedly what I've been through and how I came out of it and where I'm at now so that it does give that hope and resilience, like you said, to others.
You being here is a huge testament of that and your courage. So I think a lot of people's lives can be touched by what you're sharing and walking us through your journey. You mentioned sharing stories and sort of how that will hopefully help others and helps you. It has, hopefully a healing effect too. Is there a story of another cancer survivor that particularly inspired you or helped give you hope in some of those darker times? And, what was it about that resonated for you or about their?
Yeah, I think every story is worth listening to. I think every person is worth listening to. And again, it goes back to take it slow and be able to sit with that person and really not only like we call it in coaching, not level 1 listening and not level 2. Level 1 is listening to the words. Level 2 is listening to the body language. And level 3 is listening to the unspoken words and the unspoken movements. And that's that intuition that we talk about or that gut feeling that you have. And we do that a lot with like our friends or our family, but to be able to listen to every story and then see how this has touched you, how you can contribute to their story. Do you want to be a part of it? Of course, you don't have to be a part of every single story, but I do believe that every story is worth listening to at least. Yeah. And if I had to choose one particular story, I went on a retreat last year and I met with a healthcare provider who's a volunteer. She's a 3-time cancer survivor as well. So I got to meet someone very similar to my journey. And she just told me, get out in the nature.
Yeah.
Like connect with what was first put on this planet. And for me, I was like, again, I don't know what that means. Like, I'm in the nature. We're sitting outside talking. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? There's a bonfire. But it was, I'll bring in surrender one more time, because the purpose of this trip was to go out there and live it. And so being on a kayak for the first time and whitewater rafting, it was very frightening. It really brought you back to a very similar journey of cancer. So, and that's the whole point of this retreat, called First Ascents, and they provide that that comfort of the discomfort.
Yes.
And I believe in that so deeply myself. Before going into it, I was like, I'm pretty comfortable with discomfort. And so I got into like whitewater kayaking in that trip, and I realized that it's exactly like life. Like the river is like the life, and the trees are like life. And what I mean by that again is you if you flip over in a kayak, and if anyone has kudos to you, because it is very frightening. You're like wearing this skirt, you can't get out, and you think you're dying, like you're done. And in that moment you go into this like power mode, and you know what you got to do. And I don't know what I did, but I got myself out of it like twice, and I was able to flip over. And there were rocks, and like it was just really scary. So I realized like afterwards at night, when I was able to process this with my friend that I had met and is a 3-time cancer survivor, that she said the more you keep connecting with nature, the more you understand the way of life.
Oh, that just gave me chills because it's so true. And again, we can get so disconnected. And to be so intentional like you were to go on a retreat like that itself is also bravery. That itself is getting out of your comfort zone
Oh,
and to be
definitely.
there. I could feel that, right, as you're
With a
talking
bunch of
about it.
strangers and
Yes.
yeah, like it's a different place. I was in the East Coast. It was very, very different, and I think traveling has definitely helped me to be able to get out that comfort zone. I did a solo trip in Costa Rica, and that also helped me a lot before that, to be able to break out of that comfort zone. And again, once you can break out of that kind of comfort zone, then you can break out of the next and the next, and it's just limitless after that. And then you can break out of a kayak under a river.
Not just once, but twice. Let that be noted, 2 times.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just really, it's powerful. And I mean, her words will stick with us and hopefully those who are listening and watching. And to your point on stories, this is exactly why we wanted to start this podcast, because while everyone's story is individual, there's so much to learn, whether you've had cancer yourself or you know someone who has, or you're, like we said in the beginning, just sort of you are interested to learn more about powerful stories. So again, I just sit in so much gratitude that you're here and that we have this space, our little compassionate corner, to talk about, again, the beautiful moments like the ones you shared, but also some of the darker ones, and then all the hues in between. So again, just wishing I was next to you right now so I could feel that energy, but I feel it through the screen here, and I'm sure people can hear it through your voice as well. When you yourself share your story with others, and I can only imagine that it brings them inspiration and hope. What do you find most rewarding of being able to, you mentioned it, right? You've shared your story multiple times and hopefully plan to more as you work with survivors to thrivers. What's most rewarding about that for you?
Everyone's story is so different. And so what's rewarding for me is that I get the privilege to be a part of their story, even if it's the end of it, the beginning of it, the middle of it. And I think I love just seeing where they're at right now. And if there's anything I can do, I try to. You know, at this moment, like, I am now a certified life coach, so I know how to coach people through life and turn, you know, recovery into resilience, and survivorship into thrivership. And so I think with hearing so many different stories, I get to just be a part of their life, and I think that's one of the most privileging parts of life, is to share wherever we are and whatever we've been through with one another. And I think with COVID, it kind of interrupted that flow. But I do believe that before that, and COVID did happen for a reason, and I believe the reason was the flow was already gone. People were very deep into what they do in their work and their lives and just focus on what they have in front of them. And so I think COVID, again, helped people take it slow and not take things so seriously. And I believe that everything that you make complex will turn into more complexity. And so again, going back to simplicity, I think that's the way of living. And I hope to one day make healing contagious and make it the way of living. It's one of my biggest goals out here
Yeah.
in this lifetime.
Well, I've always said, you want to be contagious because the energy that you talked about, right? We know how positive energy makes us feel and how negative energy can weigh down. And so, your inspiration is contagious. And I think, I wanted to ask you too, is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd want to share here with our audience?
Yeah, I think you ask so many powerful questions, and I love that because I'm a coach that asks very powerful questions, and I'm on the other side now, so I answering them. I would say that I hope everyone finds some kind of happiness in this lifetime. It's too short to not go out there and seek and do everything possible. What is the one thing everyone can do today? I think everyone can tap into a place that brings them joy or happiness. The more we're happy, the more we can tap into the joyous state. And I mean, you can be in joyous state in a very dark place too. I've experienced that, and that's how I can now define joy, is that it's not when it's just happy moments and everything is sunshine and butterflies, but it's really when you tap into where is that joy coming? It's coming from your core, and nothing can shake that. And I think today is the day where I can proudly say that if cancer were to come around once again in my life, I'll welcome it in, but it's not staying for long.
No.
So just taking that word of advice for myself, and I made a promise to myself that would be not the last time, but the last time it defeats me. So I think just get out there, be happy, live life, don't take things so seriously. I need to take that word of advice right now so that I can take it on with my day. But it's hard. Like I said, you wake up in the morning and you got to do it all over again. And some days it's easier, some days it's hard. And that's why we love to do these celebratory things like birthdays and holidays, because it's like a permanent time where you can be happy, a permanent time where you can be joyful. But you can be joyful and happy at any moment.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
all
And I
over.
think, like you
Yeah.
said, it comes from within. And to go back to what you said about being in alignment, right? For you, that's meditation and yoga and nature. And I hope for whoever's listening, they find what brings them alignment and that sort of joy from within. And because, as you said, it doesn't have to come from these external things, especially I'm hearing you share that. I think, like you said, you can brush off advice, mindfulness, yoga, movement, right? Asa, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, that experience of being such a young age, and you were in Iran when it happened, and you mentioned you came back here. Can you actually ground us a bit and take us back about those 20 plus years ago of your experience as a pediatric cancer patient? Tell us a bit about Mahak, maybe for those who may not know. And then if you could bring us to now present day, how you've been connected and how ISCC came onto your radar as well.
Yeah. Funny enough, what goes around comes around, right? So I was diagnosed at 5, like I mentioned before, and at that time I was traveling to Iran, and I was from the States, and so I don't remember a lot, but I do remember the sensation of that hospital and how it was to be around a lot of kids who were crying, were some of them were alone, they didn't have family, and the fact that like my curiosity kicked in. I'm a very curious being, and I started asking questions like, why are all the kids in one like hall? Why don't they have their own room? Why aren't there curtains? Why isn't the privacy like it? Where's the privacy? So I think that in itself gave a lot of perspective to the fact that like I come from a pretty privileged place, and going back to my roots and seeing that it's not all like that everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
It really did stick with me for the rest of my life. I can still hear the children. I can still smell the room. I can hear my own fears inside, and wanting to also just go and play with these kids so that I can make friends with them, and that child self kind of pops in. And then I had such a supportive family. My grandma, my grandpa, they all came with me in order to go through this journey, and every person had their part. And so with the fact that like my grandma was running in and out and trying to get things figured out, and my mom was trying to talk to doctors, and like the walls are so thin you can hear everything. Yeah, it put me in a state where, again, like I had to shift from like being a kid to like try to understand this as an adult, because what I had experienced is very different than what I experienced in Iran. And at that time, I didn't really know that Mahak was the only place to get this type of treatment. I got my first treatment there, and I got my surgery there, and I have a beautiful scar, and everything went perfectly fine, luckily. And I did also feel a little bit like they were treating me on a higher level, because I come from the States, and then I have a supportive family. So I remember being transferred from the halls to a room, and I think it was because I questioned it so much that I was
Good
like, "Where's my
curiosity.
room?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I got into the room, I realized there's nothing. Like it's a bed, kind of like in a crib type of shape, and I'm not like 2. I'm 5 or 6. I don't sleep in a crib. And then at that point, I also was like bored, and I wanted some things to do. So like they just went and grabbed like a piece of paper and a pen, and I started drawing in the hospitals that I had experienced before. I recognized that it was so different in the materials that people have, and like the resources that's available. And
Yeah.
so just witnessing that, going through that, again, gave me a very different perspective when I came back, and I was very grateful for the fact that we have so much here. And so it's so important for people to be able to make that connection with ISCC so that they can further help and connect, and be able to give back. Again, I was so desperate for like a television, and maybe even a refrigerator, that my grandpa went ahead and bought one, and dedicated it to me and Mahak, on behalf of me, because I pushed and just kept persisting. I need a TV, or I need a fridge to be able to store the food. And it was like my curiosity was like, why don't they have this? Everyone should have that. No one should be in a state where they're just like, I don't know, it breaks my heart that it was that way. But again, that was 20 some years ago, and I know throughout time, ISCC has done an incredible job to be able to get the resources that children need and deserve. And seeing their smiling faces on these pictures and their website, it's really empowering. It is my dream to go back and to be able to visit and see how it is now, because I'm sure it's so different. So yeah, and then I met the board, and it was like an instant connection. And once I started to say my story, it was kind of like, I've come home. And
Oh,
it's interesting enough that all of this you go through, and you wonder like, okay, well, I was born in the States, but I'm from Iran, and I'm this. You don't know how to connect the dots. And once I sat down and got to know them, got to know these wonderful people, I realized that it all is connected. Like life
yeah.
is so connected, and it made perfect sense. Like I'm exactly where I need to be, and all of what I went through was exactly what I needed to go through in order to be where I'm at now.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. And I think definitely the conditions have improved from what I understand, and there's more care and much more pediatric focus. And I think at the time they were sort of a ward within a broader hospital, but now Mahak has its own hospital. And
Yeah.
I can, I think one of the missions and goals here is just to make sure that no matter where you are as a, especially a child facing cancer, that irrespective of your financial situation or your geography, you get the best possible care to then go into healing, surviving, and hopefully thriving.
Definitely, 100%. And I hope the journey continues on, and people start to really see it in the light that, hopefully not the way I saw it, but in a way that it is very important. Every single dollar, every single step, every single volunteer, it's so important to get yourself involved and give back.
Hearing it from you, Ghazal, who's had the life experiences that you've had and this perspective that you bring is just incredibly powerful. So I want to say thank you so much for sitting with us here in the Compassionate Corner, for so beautifully and authentically sharing yourself and your story with us. And I can't wait to see what you continue to do as a coach and as you help people going from survivorship to thrivership. I think that's a really beautiful framework. Thanks again for spending time with us today.
Thank you. And I hope to be back one day to talk about one of these topics that we touched on and be able to dive deep and help people be able to do that within their own lives.
Thank you all so much for joining us. The Compassionate Corner podcast is produced by the International Society for Children with Cancer. I'm your host, Roya Soleimani Winner. And a special thanks to the incredible ISCC team, our producer, Susan Shahidi, and technical director, Sogol Niku Maron, and our amazing editor, Sharsad Sabit. Music is by artist Sina Sarlak. And now at the close, we want to emphasize that the opinions expressed by the host, that's me, and guests on this podcast are not medical advice. While we strive to provide valuable insights and information, it is important to understand that the views shared here are personal opinions and experiences. We highly recommend consulting with healthcare professionals or qualified experts for personalized advice. Thanks again for spending time with us in the Compassionate Corner. We look forward to seeing you real soon.